Jimmy. I'll repeat that. Welcome to the meeting of the Kingston Police Services Board, meeting 24-8, being held on Thursday, July 18th, 2024. To start the meeting, we're going to have a presentation from Brent Fowler, who's the Director in Corporate Asset Management of Fleet of the Corporation of the City of Kingston, and Darla Campbell of Dillon Consulting. We're providing a briefing with respect to the number 2423 Kingston Police Asset Management Plan. I turn the table over to you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you once again for having us here today. We're here to speak to and present the non-core asset management plan for the Kingston Police Services Board. Darla Campbell, who's joining us virtually, is the project manager from Dillon Consulting. Here with me today is Spiros Canellis, the Director of Facilities for the City of Kingston, Neil Carboni, the Commissioner of Corporate Services, Desiree Kennedy, who everybody knows, our Chief Financial Officer for the City of Kingston, as well as Liza Giebel, who's the Associate Asset Management Specialist working on the project from Dillon Consulting. So we've been working on this for over the past 9 months. There's been a tremendous amount of support from Kingston Police staff, including the Chief and a number of others, Scarlett, Greg Sands, that have joined us in workshops to actually work through some of the material that you're going to see today. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Darla to kind of walk through the starting of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Brent, for the introduction. Are my slides available, or am I sharing screen for that?
Darla, you're going to share your screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Give me a second here to get that all operating. All right, just testing. Is that showing the presentation? Brent, can you give me an okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. In presentation mode. So we've moved to the second slide now. So welcome. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to present to the Police Services Board. Our presentation has 4 parts. We're going to talk about what's included in the city's asset management project, because it is a very large project, and we want to provide highlights to you of the vastness of the project. I'll talk about principles of asset management, so we're clear on the language that we're using in asset management. And then in part 3, we'll talk about the police services highlights, or highlights from the section of the asset management plan that speaks to police services. We'll talk about specifically state of the infrastructure and levels of service and risk. And then I'll hand it back to Brent and the team from the city for some comments around next steps. So here we go. So the City of Kingston is advancing the asset management journey. Council approved the 2022 Core Asset Management Plan back in 2022, and the project included transportation, stormwater, and water wastewater assets. And what's included in the current project? So it includes all assets owned by the city that were not included in the 2022 asset management plan, or the city has recently completed a 2023 facilities asset management plan. So what's remaining are 22 unique asset categories. So here's what we have, an example, and that does include police services. All right, so the project here, we have 22 asset categories, and we've organized them into 5 service groups. So volume 1 is infrastructure, transportation, transit, and emergency services. Volume 2 is corporate services and parking operations. Volume 3 is community services. Volume 4 is parks, parkland, and trails. And volume 5, which is the one of greatest interest to the group here today, is police, library, city real estate, and environmental assets. So some definitions here. So asset management is a coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from assets. And this is as it's defined in ISO 55000. And to realize that value normally involves balancing cost risk, opportunities, and performance benefits. So you'll see those key components throughout the next couple of slides. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities uses this definition, which is a bit more, I guess, user-friendly. Asset management is a process used in decision-making. It helps us care for the infrastructure that delivers valuable services to our community in a way that considers the service needs of our community, manages risks and opportunities, and uses resources wisely. Asset management takes a life cycle approach. So take a look at the pie chart here, and it shows us that the initial engineering and construction for new infrastructure or purchase of assets such as fleet is only a small part of the life cycle asset management pie. The remaining part is the operations and maintenance costs day over day, year over year for the asset to deliver the service that's expected. So kind of keeping that into perspective. The condition chart on the left-hand side shows that when an asset is brand new, so in year 0, it's in the best condition ever. And as it ages over time, the asset will deteriorate. And at certain points along the way, if you did nothing to improve the condition at a period of time, let's say in this example, 30 years, the only option would be to completely replace that asset because there was nothing useful remaining. Another approach to asset management would be to find opportunities to make smaller investments along the way. And that's the sawtooth approach that we're seeing at the top. Finding an opportunity to make an investment that improves the condition and extends the useful life, and overall that keeps the asset fit for purpose and being able to deliver the services that are expected from the asset. So we're taking a life cycle approach. There's 7 essential questions of asset management. The first question is, what do you have and where is it? And what is it worth, which is the replacement cost in current dollars. So this is information that's part of the asset inventory. And part of this project on the 22 asset categories was to develop an inventory list for all of the infrastructure in those 22 asset categories and to establish a replacement cost in current dollars. Question 3 is, what's its condition and expected remaining service life? Question 4 is, what's the level of service expectation and what needs to be done to deliver that level of service? And then questions 5, 6, and 7 really is the art and science of asset management. When do you need to make the investments? How much will it cost? What's the acceptable level of risk? As in, how long can you wait until it's too late to make that investment and the asset is no longer reliable? And question 7 is, how do you ensure long-term affordability? So level of service and level of risk are 2 key concepts in asset management. So here's levels of service. So we're looking at the community level of services. What does the community receive from the assets? And the technical level of services, what service does the municipality deliver? The technical level of service has 2 components. One is the asset level of service. What's the asset capable of delivering to the organization? And then the performance, the asset level of services. Why did you buy the asset in the first place? What performance are you expecting for the asset? And then a measurement of performance. Is it still performing year over year to what your expectations are and why you purchased that asset in the first place? So together, those 2 report on the technical level of service. And then part of the regulation in Ontario 58817 for asset management requires municipalities to state the current level of service, as in how are your assets currently performing, and that's within the last 2 years. So not when you bought the asset when it was brand new, but how has it been performing recently? And then to look into the future, what is the proposed level of service and how will you measure the performance in the future? And here's how level of service and risk connect. So are you meeting level of service now? And if not, that's a priority for action. If you are meeting it now, will you meet it in the future? And if not, it's a priority for action, but you have a bit of time to get there so you can plan for that. Will the level of service stay the same? If not, that's a priority for action. And if it is staying the same, there's no change in action. So in asset management, we think about the levels of service as the performance targets or the proposed levels of service. And risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on our objectives. And asset risk is about any risk to achieving our levels of service. That could be budget risks, that could be safety and compliance as well, important to meet. And priorities are defined by the size of the gaps between the target level of service and the current and future risks. And here's a close-up of the deterioration curve. So we look at condition when an asset is brand new, it's in condition 1 and very good. As it ages, it goes to condition good, fair, poor, and very poor. Probability of failure of an asset is pretty flat until it's not. So we look at this renewal opportunity zone somewhere between fair and poor as that renewal zone opportunity to improve the condition and extend the useful life before it's too late. So this is part of the information that we're looking at and how condition can help inform the next action that's required. Talking about alignment, which is an important concept in asset management. Asset management, it aligns with the strategic plan. So it aligns with Kingston's strategic plan, the city's strategic plan, as well as in this case, the strategic plan for Kingston Police. So we're showing alignment there. We're also looking at a policy alignment. So the city has an asset management policy that was approved in 2019, and it has key asset management principles. So the work that we're doing in asset management follows these principles within the policy, and then the alignment with the regulation. So as I had mentioned earlier, there is a regulation in Ontario for asset management planning. Phase 1 was the asset management policy, which is in place at the city level. Phase 2 was core assets, which it was also in place by 2022. We're working on phase 3, which is all infrastructure assets. And then there's a following phase for 2025, which is proposed levels of service and a financial strategy to fund them. So that's moving into 2025. All right, so let's dig into the components of the asset management plan related to police services. So the state of infrastructure includes a summary of asset by asset type. We have a list here on the screen. There's 133 assets, if we count them, that are included in the inventory, and combined, the buildings plus fleet come to a total of about 91 million replacement costs. And a couple of notes here that will be improvements for the 2025 plan for the update for next year is to look at a breakout of light duty vehicles to distinguish frontline patrol vehicles from support and administrative fleet. So that's an improvement that we'll be looking at for 2025, as well as looking at the inventory for information and technology assets and other equipment to be incorporated. We didn't get that information at this time for the 2024, so we recognize that that's an improvement for next time. So we'll get that the next time round. And then looking at levels of service. So the key parameters that were selected through the workshops that we did with staff, quality and reliability. And so you can see on the screen here that quality is measured around the fleet and the specialized equipment and information technology are kept in good working condition, setting a performance target or reporting on assets that are in poor or better condition and being able to report on the actual performance in 2023, and then reliability as well, so the average response time and being able to report on that. And then risk. So we have a risk profile for fleet assets here. So organizing highest to lowest. And so once we had completed the risk calculation on each of the assets, the highest risk was just under 15 and the lowest risk was just above 9. So all in the moderate risk category. And then taking a look at the capital reinvestment needs for the fleet assets, we're looking at this profile over the next 10 years, and we're looking at a 10-year annual average of just over $1 million to replace assets at the end of their useful life. And with that, I'll hand it over to the next speaker to talk about facilities.
Thank you. In our facilities asset management plan, we have 2 buildings. One is the headquarters that we're in, including the storage building the back. The total replacement cost of these 2 buildings is about 81 million. Total square footage is about 125,000 square feet. Currently, on average, budgeting for our capital budget about 461,000 a year. Over the next 10 years, we need about 716,000 per year on average to maintain a facility condition index of fair of 10%. What the facility condition index is the total cost of any renovations or renewals or repairs we have to do to the building over the replacement costs. So 10% FCI is basically saying that we could have around 8 million worth of work that needs to be done That's acceptable. Turn it back to you, Daryl.
Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, I think Brent's going to speak to the last slide. Go ahead, Brent.
Yep, thanks, Darla. Just to close out the presentation, just to speak about next steps. So we're in what we call phase 3 of meeting the provincial regulations. So that means all asset management plans for those assets not included in the core asset management plan that was already approved by council. We're going to present all of those asset management plans, including the one that you're seeing today, to council in the coming up in the fall. The scope of this exercise, so it was 22 different asset categories covering crossing all service areas, departments, everything as Darla illustrated, parks, transit, fleet. Those will all be coming together and presented in the format that Darla showed. All other municipalities, everyone, so we're not in this alone. This is a regulation that's province-wide, so obviously there's a lot of similar work being done in other municipalities, and some of the findings that we see, if we just use even the facilities example, it is fairly common that there is some backlog in infrastructure spending that needs to kind of be prioritized in the future. And that's where the significance of the 2025 requirement comes in. So with that, we'll be looking to have some public engagement with the community and council around levels of service. Is the current level of service that we're providing, is that adequate? What does the public think of it? Is there some services maybe where, the service level may need to be tweaked? So we'll get some public input on that, and council, we're planning to kick off a public engagement portion kind of tied in with some of the budget pieces later on this year. And then part of that 2025 requirement, of course, is the development of an overarching financial strategy that will meet whatever we determine those proposed levels of service are. And it could simply be that how we're doing it today and the current level of service that meets everybody's needs, and there's no change required. There was a couple of points that were brought up about some improvement areas around the asset register information. Again, that's fairly common in all municipalities when you're going through an exercise like this. We've received great support from Scarlett and others here at the city to help strengthen that asset information and actually create some digitized asset register detail, especially around the fleet side, where a lot of that fleet information is included in our enterprise fleet management system, working with folks like Scarlett, Gianni, etc. So with that, I'll turn it over to back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you. That was really informative. Thank you, Darla. So is just top of mind, is there do we change anything on how we do things with how asset management goes now? Say when we're ordering vehicles or vehicles to replace ones that are failing. How does that affect the board and senior management?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That's a great question. So part of that is around the accuracy of the asset management information, making sure we have all the warranty records. There's a lot of opportunity with extended warranty. I'm speaking on the fleet side because that's obviously the gist of most of what's included here, and breaking out the different categories so that there's obviously different life cycle expectations depending on utilization. One great thing with how the fleet's managed here is the ability to transition a fleet asset into maybe a community vehicle or something where you can still extend the life of it, but it's serving a different purpose, kind of as Darla alluded to, a fit for purpose. And when's the best time to do that? Well, a lot of that will come from the data from the fleet management system and having all the work order information included in that system. Yeah, good question.
Thank you. The board members, chief, anyone? Okay. Very good. Sorry. Like,
So I understand the directive from the province, but what's the end game that we're trying to get to in terms of what are we going to do differently from what we did before, and how is this going to get us to operate more effectively and efficiently, including other city assets? I think particularly in terms of synergies with fire and rescue and sort of operations that have previously run entirely sort of on their own. So what are we trying to achieve?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's another great question. So what we're trying to achieve is we again provided a high level overview of kind of why asset management is, the end game is really when you're making investment and financing decisions that you're using evidence-based, data and strong asset management principles, preventative maintenance practices to really optimize the value of the asset and get the most value out of each and every asset. As you can imagine, in the complexity of a municipal environment, there's a lot of competing interests for funding and things like that. So it's basically bringing all of those assets and services together into one enterprise asset management system so that council and others and board members like yourselves can make decisions around how you manage the life cycle of an asset.
So
And, yeah,
so part of the objective is to give us predictability over the longer term in terms of, for instance, what we're going to need to budget, rather than kind of doing like, every couple of years we got to replace whatever 10 cars and we got to, so that we can have a longer planning horizon, which should then also give us better predictability for city council, not just from year to year, but over a longer period in terms of any increases that council might anticipate and ask in sort of future years, for instance, as a result of predictable asset management planning.
sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair. That's exactly right. The other thing, just to come back to your question around kind of leveraging some municipal departments. So with a project like this, obviously there's the ability to utilize best practices from corporate fleet, Kingston Fire and Rescue, who's also involved in this project, and use the same fleet management system that we do and what we've kind of transitioned Kingston Police to. So there's a lot of value in being able to have that data and work together as a group to look at best practices for preventative maintenance, even standard repair times for certain types of repairs. So it really allows us to collaborate a little more. And obviously we're here to support Kingston Police. The city completes some repairs now on some of your vehicles as well to help with that.
So does it also give us ideally some comparability of what services we might want to keep in-house? What are the sort of services one might want to contract out? Some of the comparability on some of the different options analyses that might be available to us in terms of decision making in the medium term to set our services up sustainably. Because these are obviously assets like police vehicles, fire trucks that you got to make sure they're actually running and running reliably.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that particular question, I probably should defer to somebody from Kingston Police just around that kind of longer term type discussion and what you mentioned about.
But can you model sorry for interruption. But does it allow us to model, for instance, some of the different options that are available to us in terms of the services that we might want to need to affect to ensure the effectiveness of policing?
Absolutely. From the certainly from if I can speak about the fleet piece, absolutely around we can obviously utilize our telematics information to provide predictive maintenance and alerts around engine fault codes. There's a lot of opportunity for that type of predictive maintenance and looking at again, just like you said, the cost to internal versus versus external, and even the value of extended warranty as an example.
Go ahead, Gil.
So just one of the things, Darla, that I believe you mentioned was the $1 million roughly a year over year. When we're looking at that figure, is that an all-inclusive figure, replacement, maintenance, all of the other things that we need to consider? Or are we talking fleet replacement specifically?
The graph that I showed was replacement at end of useful life for fleet assets. And so that number does not include the operations and maintenance of the asset.
That's good. Okay, then I'd like to thank you for presenting to us. This is very informational and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next, I'm going to ask if there is a disclosure of conflict of interests, which there is not. Then I'll ask for the approval of the agenda. First or second, your worship. Christian, thank you. All in favor? Very good. And may I have the adoption of the minutes from the last meeting, 2407, held on June 20th, 2024, be adopted. Christian, thank you. Jimmy, all in favor? Very good. This time I'd like to talk about the communications that we've received, that the following communications from the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, and the Office of the Chief of Police be received. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Your Worship. All in favor? Very good. I'll ask if there's any questions from any of the board concerning any of the information that was sent. Okay.
Is there,
Yeah.
it's just an informational piece. I guess this is everybody's individual problem, but whether there's a way to publicize more effectively the license plate renewal process now that there's no stickers, because I know there's a number of people who are going to Quebec and coming back with $450 fines for not having a sticker. That perhaps is there something that we can do to provide greater awareness that if you leave the province, the same rules do not necessarily apply.
Certainly, and I know the Ontario government's been trying to notify people by email and text. It's been hit and miss. Knowing some people who've went to Quebec and came back very unhappy, I will speak with our inspector in charge of media and maybe get something put out for sure. And I know it's just changed, so it doesn't include motorhomes or vintage vehicles, but people are continually encouraged to do that. But that's a good point, and we can certainly highlight that for the community through our media section, and we'd be happy to do that.
And the alternatives for those who do leave the province, who still need some evidence, how to obtain that and stuff, maybe to include that in the communication. I realize that's not your obligation to do, but I'm just thinking.
No, that's good. And the Ontario.ca website really outlines it's very simple. You just need your ownership and plug in a couple of numbers and then click it. And they're trying to do it that it will happen automatically. But I would, for the first bit until it's up and running, make sure you check your license, especially if you've got a birthday coming up. That's a very important indicator.
Thank you, Christian. All right. Next, is there anyone else for any of the communications? Okay. Then we'll move on to delegations, of which there is none. Information reports. I'll ask that Chief Fraser, if he could like to speak to 3 of the reports.
So if we want to start with Scarlett, we could go through our Q2 operating budget.
Can you hear me okay? Yep. So I'll be brief, but good afternoon, everyone. The information report being presented today provides a financial status update of the operating budget for Kingston Police at June 30th, 2024. Exhibits to the report provide detailed budget and actual information and resulting variances by revenue and expense, with an overall net operating position which reflects a surplus position at 49.22% of the total budget at June 30th, and within the Q2 budgeted projections. With respect to the financial results, revenues and expenses are tracking as expected and reflect regular expected seasonal and timing variances normally experienced year over year. Staff continue to remain very diligent with spending, and really we should commend the entire senior management team for all the efforts being put forth to managing the budget. Staff continue to pursue grants and other funding opportunities and look for ways to reduce expenses and manage discretionary spending where possible. Notable variances are discussed in the report. So again, I will not do a repeat of that information, but instead focus on potential risks and cost pressures that could impact results for the remainder of the year. While the 2024 budget does incorporate estimated expenditures associated with policing the unsanctioned gatherings, there wasn't a second homecoming weekend in 2023, which really helped in keeping costs lower than previous years. We are very hopeful that this trend will continue into 2024, but this is an area of caution to note. Budget pressures continue to be experienced in absentee costs related to WSIB, sick leave, as well as accommodated workers, including officers that are not frontline deployable. The 4 collective agreements expired at the end of December 2022, and although budget results include an estimated labor contract settlement amount, depending on where we actually land with the settlements, the budget could be impacted either positively or negatively, hopefully positively. And then unforeseen circumstances, situations, or activities always present budgetary risks to a police budget, such as spikes in crime rates or activities, protests, and unsanctioned gatherings. There are always other unknown and budget requests that arise. Thank you for listening today, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, and thank you. Just to echo what Scarlett said, obviously Des, who was just here, the city director of finance, works very closely and has really helped us along, and obviously attaining Scarlett to assist us. And so thank you for that. And then of course our team, as we continue to drive the budget and we continue to drive fiscal responsibility down through the organization, we're starting to see a real benefit. But to be honest, we're some serious crimes could occur. We're hoping not. We always touch wood, but I can tell you, it's certainly one of our pressures is the prolific rise we're seeing in the use of weapons, whether it's firearms, edge weapons, blunt objects, and then the required response by our emergency response team. And we're seeing a dramatic increase in that because of obviously the increase in weapons that are being brought into our community. It unfortunately escalates our response, and we have a number of incidents in which our emergency response team has been called out, rightly so, and we're lucky to have them. They're a great group of well-trained officers that are really making a difference in our community. But that's certainly one of the pressures we're observing right now as well. So we continue to work towards keeping our community safe, but we do see that, and it's not uncommon in other communities seeing the increase in use of weapons. So we'll keep monitoring that for you. And thank you, Scarlett, for all your hard work. It's really appreciated.
Anyone else? Yeah, Gail, go ahead.
Just a quick question and follow-up of our presentation earlier. Are we managing that cost year over year fleet replacement on a projected basis, or and the maintenance and so on, or are we in a reactive situation? Just out of curiosity.
I'd have to say a bit of both. More towards the managing on the kind of reactive side, in my opinion. There's not been a ton of like long range planning. So that's kind of where we're trying to get to as a senior management team. It's more been kind of focused on the 1 year at a time, where we're kind of really looking at having some more useful data so that we can start projecting out over the long term and start planning and kind of prioritizing the needs. So yeah, definitely we're more, especially on the fleet, and it's taking so long for the replacements to come for fleet. Like we're ordering them and then a year later they're coming. But yeah.
And just to piggyback on that, we also, our expectations pre-pandemic with long range and fleet and then post-pandemic are completely different in the quality that is being delivered. And therefore, we're seeing a lot more major events occurring with some of our fleet that would never have happened before this soon. So you know, and then of course we've been monitoring this and making changes in the style of vehicle, types of vehicles, knowing provincially what's out there and what's working for others. So we're trying to talk with them and see what's working for them, and then we're mirroring it. And then of course our people here working collaboratively with the city now, which really wasn't done frequently before. We have a great group of people right behind us in a big garage that our city staff, and we're starting to send some vehicles there. And then we're working on strategies that are going to mitigate some of the exorbitant costs we've been experiencing over the past 4 years. We're going to start mitigating them, and we have some good strategies coming to the board in the next, probably by September, with some ideas for the board to consider. So we're getting there, and then using technology to ensure that we're tracking the vehicles, and we can just by a click go in and see the type of type of usage and when they're required to have an oil change and general maintenance. So it's getting there. We're on the right trajectory, but we still got a ways to go.
Christian, go ahead.
I'm not necessarily looking for an answer for that today, but I wonder whether there's some optimization strategies that emerge, having, now that you've been at this for a bit over a year kind of thing. As we get into budgeting season, there might be some opportunities for us to rethink. Is there things that we're doing that really the city should be doing? Is there things that we're doing that really the province should be doing? Like is there some economies of scale? Is there some alignment issues that sort of come out? And because I suspect some of the variance and some of the some of the risk that we're carrying is probably as a result of misalignment in terms of we're owning liabilities that really probably the police service maybe shouldn't be owning. So I'd be interested as we get into budget season, as kind of conversations that we can have to, especially on the on some of the variances and some of the risks. Is there opportunities we can have with the city and with other levels of government to try to improve the predictability of our position? So I appreciate the work that both you and the city staff are doing to get us to much more predictable budgeting model, which I suspect his worship and council will also significantly appreciate.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one other comment is that the entire senior management team, this is something that we kind of talk about almost in every senior management meeting, is that these are the types of things that we're exploring, and definitely all of these are under consideration right now. That we're going to be looking at all these things as budget, seeing what we can do better, like maybe not contracting out so much as an example. But yeah.
I suspect there's also elements that we don't control, but perhaps where between his worship, the chair, and the chief, we might be able to make a evidence-based case to higher levels of government that this is not working in anybody's best interest, and where we might need to make a case for change.
Then that's for sure. And one connection, thanks to yourself, Christian, is we've made that connection with Procurement Ontario, and I know we're making some good headway there. And a good example also locally is our facility and using the city's facility management tool and the ticketing system. So when something either needs to be maintained or break, it's attended to very quickly. And of course, we have excellent staff inside who just literally work hand in hand with the city. So it's a work in progress, but I think the board's going to be pleasantly surprised as they see where we're actually going to be getting. So we'll continue that for sure. And the city has been tremendous. So it's been certainly a great relationship that way. And we couldn't have done it with, we have Johnny Vecchio here, who is our go-to for everything. And he's a remarkable individual. So we're very fortunate.
I just want to commend the professionalism of the of what we've seen, especially over the last year here in terms of supports from the city.
Very good. Thank you. Very much appreciated. You wanted to talk to the statistical?
Certainly. So our quarter two statistical report is out. Um, I guess it's kind of, as we say, it's a bit of a snapshot, but when we look over, when we have kind of where we're looking and our strategic plan and what we're doing, crimes against persons is down, which is good to see in quarter two. It's not down by tons, but at least it's down. And, we have some thefts that are down, which is good. And I know that, those are kind of some of the violent offenses that we're seeing in our community are generally isolated a lot of the time, but not all the time, which is unfortunate. And of course, for us, as I will say, every time that we come together, mental health and addictions issues are leading the way in the lawlessness that we're seeing. And there's nothing really available for people suffering from mental health and from addictions issues. We seem to be spending more money keeping them addicted to substances than getting them off. And it's not the be all and end all. And I understand that, but that's certainly in almost every crime that we're investigating. Certainly when it comes to violence and when it comes to weapons, mental health or an addiction issue is playing the major role, where if that was not prevalent, we would not have seen that offense. So we continue to track and, obviously we're notifying the public of trends. And unfortunately, there just seems to be a lot going on. And once again, it's not isolated to Kingston. I'm talking to my police chiefs and all other communities. I've been to other communities and you know what, everybody's struggling and it's very interesting, but I applaud our people for daily going out there and facing what they're facing, because the world has changed. I've been in policing for 33 years. I've never seen it like this, and it's not getting better. And that's what I always say when people say, how are things going? I just say, look out your window. Tell me if you think it's better or worse. And, we're not the answer to everything. We're trying to be, and we'll continue to do that. And I applaud our staff for going out there, and they're just facing a lot of different things now than they used to. So we'll continue to monitor things. And as we see a trend, we're trying to address the trend. We'll try and keep the public notified as best we can. And certainly expanding our media and things like that is one of our steps too.
Are we tracking, or would it be useful to track the specific costs incurred by the encampment for the service, both in terms of the use of force statistics, as well as in terms of the call volume and dedicated officer hours to that one particular issue?
Yeah, we started doing that weeks ago. And so anything that comes in related to an encampment, we're tracking. We also have a dedicated resource to encampments now. We have an officer that we just have to assign directly to it. And our core team as well, Staff Sergeant Goff, who's here working with Kyle Compo at City Bylaw. And once again, coming back to that strategy with encampments of let's be proactive and not reactive, and let's go out and see what resources and bring outreach, bring bylaw, bring the police. Let's go to these encampments and let's talk to people and see what they need. Can we get them? Can we get them what we need? Like, for example, what we saw in Belleville, where they had a super ID clinic, because some people don't have ID. So they were coming in and doing it. We were spearheading to try and do that here in Kingston. And fortunately, another community group already had picked the ball up and was running with it to do that. And that's all of these things, because you can't get a job if you don't have ID, and you can't get a lot of things if you don't have either a social insurance number. So we're going to continue doing that. And certainly, trying to be reactive for us it's just ineffective, but we can't arrest our way out of it. So we need all of us working together. So we've got a great collaboration going, I hope everybody's seeing a bit of a trend between the police and the city working together, whether it's fleet, whether it's facility, whether it's encampments. And it's the only way we'll get through this. There's not one agency who's going to solve this problem. We have to be together, and it's going to take time, and we're going to have to keep plugging away. But we also have to remember that we can't leave everyone else in the dust. And there's a lot of people who feel that way. And certainly I know it's frustrating for our staff, because our hands sometimes are tied and we're limited to what we can do. And we continually advocate for pathways to rehabilitation and all of these things that are really the answer. But we know, and I know the city's behind us 100% on that. And we just got to get the people who can listen and get these, these centers to help people and provide them with the resources they need. And we'll continue to do that.
Because whenever that might be useful in the same way that we talk about St. Patty's Day and about homecoming, whether we make this sort of a third separate issue that we track, even just so taxpayers and city council can understand the costs, that these are political decisions that ultimately we don't make, but the police service ultimately does have to, that people understand there are significant costs associated with the decisions that we make around this. So we can make those transparent and that people understand when we come with a budget ask, here's how much of that budget ask is driven by these particular issues.
Yeah, you're right on the money. Exactly. And that's exactly, I'd love to claim it. It was my brilliant idea, but I will have to pass credit off to Scarlett, who said we need to start capturing things in this manner. And that's just another benefit of having Scarlett on our team. And so, like I said, we did start that weeks ago, and we will be able to start pinpointing almost every dollar to it. So thanks for that.
Jimmy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Please allow me to say thank you for your collaboration and your team, the Kingston Police with the city. It is great to see that things are getting along and we are working together to make sure that Kingston is in good hand politically and for the safety reasons with the police. Also, I appreciate all the men's and women's in police uniform in Kingston for doing a great job. While I said that, I see some of the numbers is not very much, but has been increased and such as criminal harassment and other criminal code. And I see the some difference between fraud as well and the theft. So is any particular reason that we're seeing that little bit increase in there?
Yeah, I think when it comes to criminal harassment and thing, we see, intimate partner violence, unfortunately, is still prevalent in every community, and a lot of harassment relates to that. And furthermore, we see a lot more online. And it's really, when people say, where did crime go? We say to the internet. And we're seeing a lot more crime that way. Other criminal code offenses include a number of different categories. Some are, violence against people, violence against property, theft of property, sexual assault, things like that. And we are, just as you saw in the newspaper, recently with sexual assault being committed in our community, it's happening, thefts, and we're happy to see some of the assaults have reduced. And but when it comes to crimes of opportunity, in particular, one of the biggest things we see are the theft of bicycles. And it's theft of bicycle, theft of scooters, theft of e-bikes, theft of vehicles, obviously, which is prolific in the province, even though there's a lot being done to drive it to the East Coast, apparently, according to the news today. But, at the end of the day, we're seeing a lot of recidivism, a lot of people who are, one of the incidents, which is an offender who's on Princess Street, who's always exposing himself and always with a knife, and becomes engaged with our officers. We have to, wrestle the knife away from him. He's taken to bail court and he's out before the officer's back to the station, and he's doing it again on Princess Street. And so we go down and get him on Princess Street, and he's back and he's doing it again on Princess Street, and the revolving door just doesn't work. And we understand the ladder principle to release. We understand what the Ministry of Attorney General is trying to do, but the result is what you're seeing here, because barriers to release, we understand not everyone has a home, not everyone has an address, but if they're being released and their address is the encampment at Bell Park, it makes it hard for us to move them from Bell Park because they're required to live there, or a street corner in the city of Kingston is their address, or no fixed address, just being released and no fixed address. It makes it hard, so it ends up with warrants and things. So we're continuing to work through it. The system, we're a spoke in the wheel, and we continue to work through it. And we're hopeful that as we move forward, that things may change.
But thank you, and I have no doubt in my mind the hard work you guys are doing it. Also, you mentioned that vehicle theft is rising in province-wise, and we have been hearing in the news and on the social media as well. Is that some kind of things, or like we can plan strategy for the like being proactive, so it does not hit Kingston harder than other cities?
Yeah, it's as we tell everybody, sometimes getting back to the old basics are a good thing, like the club on your steering wheel. If we remember the days of the club, you know, it's an effective tool because it maybe drives them to another vehicle, or at least drives them down the street, or drives them to another neighborhood. But certainly, we're starting to see, if you saw in Toronto, where people are putting bollards in their driveways or having your car, and we're encouraging people to keep your doors locked. But obviously, technology now can defeat that. Faraday bags to keep your key fob in, so the signal isn't being transmitted. We'll continue to educate, and I know Equite is doing a tremendous job provincially, as are a number of police services who've come together with task force. But locally, as we say, we tell people, keep your doors locked, keep everything locked, don't keep things in your car. If you can put a club, you can put it in your garage, you can do things. But unfortunately, there's no the technology does exist where you can disable your vehicle. It costs money to do it, but we're starting to see insurance companies now with the high risk vehicles starting to implement the fact that if you put these type of anti-theft devices in, that your insurance premiums will come down. So we'll just continue, and as new technology comes out, we continue to push it forward.
Since we're already talking about tracking things, two things that I was wondering whether we can track. Again, I don't need an answer right now. Is sort of the costs of recidivism, and the particular cases that sort of you mentioned. So because I suspect we have some frequent flyers here. As you know, the chief in Vancouver went on record with one person being rearrested 4,000 times. Just so we can make transparent the costs associated with that. And the other is the costs associated with, I believe there's still no compensation for local police forces now investigating some of the sexual criminal complaints in the military. And that we make sure we also continue to track that, so we can make it transparent to local taxpayers that we're essentially picking up the federal government's duties, and that they're subsidizing them, and then they have been for years without compensation from the federal government.
Yeah, certainly. And something we have been trying to capture is that recidivism, and in particular on like, for example, we did provide, I can't remember the number, but we provide a cost on what a breach, when it costs for us to arrest a person, process them for a breach, and then for them to be released and then do it 15 times. So we'll continue to do that. I know Scarlett's nodding her head there that we'll continue working on that. And Inspector Pete, who's present with us here, is sitting on the transition committee for Canadian Armed Forces and sexual assaults. And yes, that's something that we continue to really advocate and monitor, because it's very costly, in particular with transient military personnel who, whether it's victims, witnesses, or suspects that may be all over the country. And then the obligation on the Kingston Police to travel to interview a witness in Nanaimo, and then another one in Halifax, and a suspect in Labrador. So those are all costs that we're continually working in. And we have a great relationship here with our local armed forces and military police. And so very collaborative. And I know Inspector Pete working with our detectives. We have a kind of a relationship right now, in the fact that, until legislation demands that we have to take everything, we're working collaboratively to try and mitigate all that and provide the best service to our victims that are out there, because that's really what this is about, is providing the service to the victims, because they shouldn't, there shouldn't be delays, and there shouldn't be costs incurred and things like that. So that's really what it's at, where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, thank you for the information and the work that you and your team are doing on this. I think I have a comment and a question on this. First, I think one of the concerns that I have with our statistics, particularly related to theft and vandalism and some of these petty crimes, is that people are starting to give up reporting because it's getting so bad. And I think that that's where we're going to have to start attaching asterisks to some of these, because obviously we can only list what we're hearing about. That's a big concern. Today, I was on the phone with a property owner who has been hit so many times that he is now threatening to take the law into his own hands, so to speak. So my question and concern is, are we at risk of vigilantism and other pieces if there are these gaps here? My bigger concern is, where does that lead? And is there anything, best practices or any other information you're hearing from other chiefs across the province? Is the discussion that you're having, is there anything else that we need to be aware of or thinking about?
No, good points for sure, because when we get together as chiefs, the terminology we're using is that victimization is becoming normalized. So people are like, it's my turn. You know, my neighbors have all been broken into. I haven't. Oh, it's my turn. And then it's like, well, nobody's ever going to catch them or do anything. And so, and if they do, they're just getting out. So that's the commentary we are getting. You know, and as we always talk to people, they do talk about taking the law into their own hands, and we highly discourage that because you know, obviously there is a system, as ineffective it may be right now. It's our system of law in Canada, and certainly our system is not vigilante justice. But I can understand the frustration of people, and I can certainly tell you from my previous life in another community, having discussions with people who've had their garage broken into by the same person 5 times in 14 days. Their question is to the police, why aren't you doing anything about it? And, you know, once we've made the arrest and bring them to court, that's where unfortunately our job ends. And I know there's a lot of advocates who are going to be screaming and yelling at me because jail is not the answer. I'm not saying that. And innocent until proven guilty is our system of justice in Canada. But our criminal justice system is also built on deterrence and rehabilitation. If there's no deterrence and there's no rehabilitation, then it puts it into chaos, as we would call it. So this is what we're all talking about. I was just had a conversation with the chief from Alberta, and you know, it's unfortunately all across Canada, and it's what's, like I say, the best term to use is ineffective. We encourage people not to take the law into their own hands because then maybe they're committing a criminal offense themselves. And I know it's, you know, pretty rich coming from me, and people will say, well, there's nothing being done anyways. So it's tough. And once again, our job as police officers is to enforce the law and then bring the people to justice. And then that's where our job ends. And then it switches over to the Attorney General's office to prosecute. And I encourage anyone, if you want to see what's happening, to go. Courts are open forums, to go and sit in a court and actually watch trials and see what's happening. And you'll only see cases that are being brought to trial. You haven't seen all of the cases that have been withdrawn, dismissed. So for example, someone who may have committed a number of offenses and be out on numerous releases, and let's say there's 15 offenses, they're not going to get convicted. They're going to dump a number of those offenses before they get there. And that's just part of the system. And so many, you know, if it's a person who, let's say they've stolen 15 bikes and we can prove 15 bikes, they're not going to prosecute them for the theft of 15 bikes. And it's unfortunate. And, you know, I've been where I live, our building's been a victim of the same person over and over and over. We have video footage. We know who it is. I come in, they phone in, we go arrest the person, they're released, and a couple days later, they're back in breaking in and stealing items. So it is prolific. I think it's an issue all across Canada. We're not immune to it, and we're trying to get people to listen and hear the chiefs of police, hear the officers who are out there. Because the other side of it is, think of how frustrating it is for an officer who is like, I'm back here. The person spit in my face, tried to stab me, and that was yesterday. And I'm back here because he's exposing himself to minors with a knife again. And okay, and in he goes, and then the next day, it's like Groundhog Day. Probably the best way to sum it up, Groundhog Day. And once again, you know, pointing fingers isn't the answer because we're all in the system, and it's just that right now it's certainly unique. For me, I can tell you that it's unique. In 33 years of policing, I've never seen it. And I can tell you every chief I know that's been on the job longer than 25 years will tell you it, and any officer will. And like I say, we just see it with the statistics and the number of weapons, number of bail violations, and number of recidivists that are continually 10% of the population committing 90% of the crimes. And it's unfortunate, but I'd ask the community, please, advocate, speak to your members of parliament, ask for change, ask for them to consider what's taking place. And like I said, the law is the law, and the law is interpreted by our justice system. And we need if it's not serving the communities, then they need to be made aware of that and make alterations. I think that's about the best way I could put it politically. Hopefully that was politically, might have been a little off, but trying to be polite. So.
Just for information, is there a point in your career where you can say, okay, this is where things changed?
Yeah, I would think, the last time the pendulums went left and right, and I'm not a political person, but probably 2007 into 2008. And then it's unfortunately, generally the pendulum swings one way and will come back and swings the other way. And it's really, really gone right now. And I'm not speaking out of school. All you have to do is walk downtown and you would agree that if you were 6 years ago and today, would you say that it's Princess Street's the same? And I can guarantee you, any person you talk to will say, absolutely not. And that's what I'm basing it on. Evidence of literally being down there, not on anything else other than if you go out, and you walk Princess Street or you walk Ontario Street, it's not the same way it was even 5 years ago. Probably, and I haven't been a Kingstonian for a long period of time, so I can certainly say, but in any other community, it's very similar. And I can tell you 5, 6 years ago, it started to change, and we're suffering the consequences now. And once again, this is, we're not bashing anybody here. We're saying, like I always say, mental health is not a crime. Mental health is an illness. And you don't need the police to start working as ER doctors, but that's what we're doing. And let's address the mental health with the proper people, because then oftentimes something may not occur, or a person's not in a crisis where they're doing something they would generally never do. And the same thing with addictions. And you know what? If it was easy to get off drugs, everyone would be off of it. It's not easy. And it's not just flicking a switch and going, hey, you know what? I'm going to get off drugs. When I started in the downtown east side in Vancouver, what I saw then is what we see now, which for me is the sad part, because we're 33 years later, 31 years later, and nothing's changed. And how can a country like Canada not change in 30 years? I don't know. Like I said, that's my soapbox. Sorry about that.
All good, good information. Thank you. Did you want to say something?
There's actually two other flashpoints, and I think Christian would agree with me. One is in the 1990s when sentencing began to change, and the other is in or about the same period, and I'm not familiar with the exact date, but the mental health regime changed and people started being turned out with the expectation that some more supports would be put in place in the community, and no supports ever happened. So you had people who were formerly institutionalized now out there without support, busy being victims and occasionally accused themselves. And that is actually a huge one. And that is seminal. That's where the seed was laid for your other stuff. I know that was deep and meaningful, but that's a real flashpoint.
Yeah, I actually get that. So it's to be worked on, it'd be a provincial matter, would you say?
It's a bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a new bail reform that's come out with regards to release called the ladder principle of release. And obviously, like I said, innocent until proven guilty is the main gist of that. But to your point, Mr. Mayor, an individual who's been the victim of crime so long, he may not believe in the principles of, hey, innocent until proven guilty, because if you've broken into my house 6 times and they know it's you, at what point are you now guilty? Because, but our system is innocent until proven guilty. And that's why, I believe it's Regina versus Antic being the case that ensures innocence until proven guilty. And I could be wrong in the case, but, there are case law out there that drives all the rest of the system. So, that's where we're at. And I wish I had the quick answer, and I know everybody else, if there was, we'd already be doing it. And, if I had hair, I'd probably have pulled it out, but I don't have any left. So
And also what goes along with addiction so much is the fine line of right and wrong gets really skewed while you're in the addiction. So I imagine that has a lot to do with it as well. Okay, are we good for these motions for the reports? Right? Christian, your worship, all in favor? Thank you. Very good. And then we're going to go to, okay, we're going to go, I'm going to need a motion for the renewal of an appointment of a special constable, Franco Domenico Di Pietrionio. Di Pietrionio. Is that good, Ken? All right, good. Thank you. The constable of the police service board renew the special constable appointment of Franco Domenico Di Pietriantonio for the purposes of transporting, searching, guarding, control, escort, and conveyance of persons in custody, and to perform duties related to the responsibilities of police service boards under Part 15, providing security at premises and for persons or places that are occupied or utilized as courts in accordance with 95-3-3, a part of 15 of the Community Safety and Policing Act, to execution of warrants of a committal, service of summonses, subpoenas, and other legal documents with respect to areas where the police service board has policing responsibility, and that the board issue a certificate of appointment to Special Constable Franco Domenico Di Pietriantonio pursuant of Section 92(6) of the CSPA. I have a first and a second. Gail, thank you. Christian, all in favor? Very good, thank you. And then I'm also going to ask for a motion for a ratification of motion, the memorandum of understanding between the Ottawa Police Board Services, the Kingston Police and the Kingston Police Services Board Canada Day events, that the Kingston Police Service Board ratify a motion passed by a poll of quorum of board members on June 29th, 2024, pending the next scheduled public board meeting, that the board approve and endorse a memorandum of understanding between the Ottawa Police and the Ottawa Police Services Board, the Kingston Police and the Kingston Police Service Board regarding the Ottawa Police Service request for assistance in policing Canada Day events, that the board authorizes the chair with the delegate to execute the MOU on behalf of the board. But then, is that we're going to change? No, that's just as is. Okay, thank you, Larry. New business. Oh, sorry, first or seconder. Thank you. Jimmy, Christian, all in favor? Okay. New business is going to be the court security. I'm going to ask the chief if you'd like to comment on the article in the WIG Standard last Saturday.
Certainly, no, and I appreciate the opportunity. Just, I'll keep it very brief. Just, we have a court security protocol that we have that goes with our court security plan. And it all is incumbent with our local court security committee, local being key. And so there's a process in our court security plan to evaluate court security. And court security has been delivered in Kingston in the manner in which it has for a number of years. And of course, our court security committee is highly involved in how we deliver that. So when situations arise, and then we will put the local committee together again, and we'll come up with recommendations. Obviously, the board is the funding principle behind it. We spend a lot of money on court security. And unfortunately, the city of Kingston is unfortunate to have 4 court buildings when there should be 1 consolidated court building, 4 buildings with failing infrastructure, and we're providing security to it. So you have to pay 4 times the amount. And I know I'm not the purveyor of this idea of a consolidated court building. I think the mayor and everybody's been asking for it for years and years and years. And of course, we're providing security in the manner in which the local committee asks us to do it. So we go back to the committee, and if they want to change, we'll do that all the time, continually to advocate that the failing infrastructure is part and parcel of the problem. So, and then if there's a big financial hit to the taxpayer, we obviously have to come back to the board to get approval on that. So I don't want to be premature in any comments because we want to provide the opportunity for our local court security committee to provide some input. And then we're doing obviously a court security assessment. It's well underway right now.
Perhaps this is an opportunity for the board to write to the minister and to point out to the minister the disproportionate costs as a result of the decision not to have a consolidated board meeting and to request a special transfer until a political decision is made to resolve the disproportionate costs that the province is offloading on Kingston taxpayers.
That would be tremendous.
All right, can we make that happen? Okay, very good.
There might be some merit to timing in the sense that I think you'll have some real commentary about deficiencies and fire codes and all that other stuff in the review, and also maybe some costing as to what the MEG one entrance, which is not possible in a building that's porous and has a million entrances, but the one entrance approach and so on would cost. Just
So-
the timing of it, because if you send two, you look like you're
Oh, I'm totally with you. Let's get one consolidated request, and I suspect we might get even some sympathies from
gonna
the
expect
minister.
you sharpen your pencil. You have a very sharp pencil.
If we can make an evidence-based case and we can show, I think there might be some sympathies.
So we'll look to you to make the evidence. with
Certainly.
Your ongoing meetings.
Yes.
And Lori, you can write the letter. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Then I'm going to ask to move in camera. Thank you, Christian, your worship, all in favor? Very good. Let's just do 5 minutes if that's okay. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.